This is another collection of stories from the Reddit user Crazyturtlemama. Story 1. There was a low point in my life, and I just needed a little help. A friend told me about this friendly family who agreed to rent me a room they built in their garage until I got on my feet. I didn't mind. I made it warm and cozy. I even put a blanket up as a makeshift door for privacy and to keep the cold out. Their daughter Tracy and I became very close. The heads of our beds were separated by the garage, and we would sometimes talk to each other through the paper-thin wall when her parents were asleep. It was a small 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house with a garage in the front located directly across from the Palmdale Mall. You walk through the front door into the living room and kitchen, and then to the right an open doorway to the hall, her room, then the other rooms in the back. One night, I was sleeping, and I woke up feeling dread. I started to hear thumps and noises on the other side of the wall that I couldn't explain. At first, I thought it was her TV on low, and her just moving around to get comfortable, but I soon realized that I was hearing her. It sounded like she was crying, almost as if into a pillow. I couldn't make out what she was saying. "No, go away, please." Then I heard her scream out my name. I ran in that house so fast that I beat her parents to the room. As I approached her open door, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. It was a grey mist hovering over her bed like a sheet, and she was laying there, gripping her blankets up to her neck. The second I entered the doorway, I saw the image of a withered older man pressing his face against hers. Then it whipped its head and looked straight at me like I was intruding. Its face then twisted and grimaced at me as she screamed my name again, but louder. I could feel its hate. And then it whisked away, like long strands of hair blowing in the wind, followed by a dark shadow that trailed behind as it quickly dissipated. I was the first to run to her bedside, holding her tight. I rocked her in my arms, her body was shaking, and it took what seemed like forever for her to calm down enough to tell us what happened. She said she had just laid down and turned the light off on her nightstand when she heard something coming from the other side of the room near the closet. Tracy said that she sat up trying to adjust her eyes when she saw what looked like a mist on the floor moving towards her bed. The room started getting colder. Tracy saw a face forming with a full body stretching out, and it started crawling up the end of her bed to her legs. Tracy tried to move. Still, she felt frozen with fear. Tracy told it no, but it just kept crawling up her body until its face was on top of hers. She said, "That face. He was smiling while he was choking me and taking my breath." She then said that she screamed out my name. I don't know why her parents just blew it off. They told her it was probably just a bad dream that felt real. But I believed her. They didn't see what I saw. I asked her dad the next day why they reacted like that and didn't support her fear, and he told me that he just thought she had an overactive imagination. He said that they see things all the time as well that can't be explained, but they don't freak out about it. He told me that they named it Charlie. We strung white Christmas lights throughout her room after, and from that point on, she never slept with her lights out. A couple of months later, the weather was starting to get cold, almost unbearable, and they were kind enough to let me sleep on a recliner in the living room that was facing the doorway to the hall. They had a baby gate in that doorway to keep their dog from going into their bedrooms at night, and I didn't mind sharing my chair. The dog kept me warm. On this particular night, it was late. Everyone was in their rooms, and it was quiet. The sound of the ticking clock was lulling me to sleep. I must have been knocked out for a couple of hours when I heard the gate rattle. I thought it was just her father getting a late-night cup of coffee like he had done so many times before, so I didn't even look out of my covers. Only thing was, this time, I didn't hear him in the kitchen. Oh well, I thought, it was probably someone going to the bathroom. So, I fell back to sleep. Once again, I was awakened by the gate rattling. Only this time, it was louder, as if someone was intentionally trying to wake me up. The dog next to me started shaking and growling, so I peeked out from under my blanket. There he was, standing with his hands on the gate, shaking it. He shook it louder and louder, and the dog started to bark. I thought someone was going to hear all the racket and come out, but nobody did. I was alone with this thing glaring at me. His face started to morph and his mouth stretched open, but I could somewhat see through him. And in a deep guttural voice, he adamantly told me to get out. I put the blanket over my head and cried, "Okay," over and over, until he disappeared. I stayed up all night watching TV, just waiting until someone woke up. It wasn't more than a few days, and I was out of there. Pretty soon after that, they ended up moving too. Not for the same reason, but I'm glad they did. I can't tell you the backstory of the house or who that older man was. Later, I worked doing maintenance and painting for the real estate company that contracted that house. And every time it would come up for repairs, I bid it off to other workers. Before I continue to the next story, I just want to say thank you for choosing to watch this video, and I hope you're enjoying my narration. If you are, please show your appreciation by liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to my channel. It really helps me out. Story 2. All my life since childhood, I lived on the edge of the paranormal. I could see things as a child, as did my siblings. My mother always taught us growing up that there were things we might not see or understand, but that doesn't mean they are not there. I think that's why spirits were always drawn to us. We were more open and willing to listen to the other side. This was an event that happened around 1998. I was living in a 2-bedroom fourplex townhouse with my 3-year-old son and his father Mike. Money was tight, so I was thinking about renting out one of the rooms to help out. Mike had a friend who, in my opinion, lacked compassion for others and would brag about how he would get one over on them. He often talked about this one particular gentleman whose name was Bill, and it saddened me. One night, we were having a get-together, and he asked if he could bring him over. I was curious to meet him, so I said yes. He was a middle-aged, balding man who worked at a college as a teacher. He wasn't shy about his sexual preference, but it didn't bother me. He was kind, but seemed lonely, so he captured my heart, and we became very close friends. He spoke about his rich parents and how he disgraced them. They wouldn't even give him a key to the front door, him having to always enter from the back so their friends wouldn't see him. All he ever wanted was to feel their love. He told me that every time he went to get a haircut, he would close his eyes and try to imagine his mother's hand stroking his hair. This broke my heart and brought me even closer to him. I asked him why he was living with them, and he told me that on a teacher's salary, that's all he could afford. "This is your lucky day," I told him. "You can rent my room for considerably less than what you pay them, and I would be proud to have you walk through my front door." He was elated and moved in right away. Things were good. My son loved him, and I loved him too. He would sit on the floor and play with him all the time. Bill said that he had never laughed so much in his life. After a while of living there, I noticed he was getting closer to Mike's friend. I tried to warn Bill about his character and his probable intentions, but he told me that he was a big boy and not to worry about it. But I didn't listen. Behind his back, I went to Mike's friend and pleaded with him not to hurt Bill. If he didn't share the same feelings, I wanted him to back off. I knew he had others and was just trying to get whatever he could from Bill in his sensitive state, but he just laughed at me like I was stupid, saying I wouldn't think of hurting him. Time went on, and I noticed a change in my Bill. He was withdrawn, and he stopped joining us for dinner downstairs. But when I asked him what was going on, he simply told me it was nothing. He was just tired, and he would be fine. One night, we had been gone all day visiting my mother 3 hours away. It was a long day, and we were exhausted. Bill called me while I was driving because he wanted to talk to me about something important. I assured him we would talk when I got home, but by the time we arrived, it was very late. We were so tired we never made it up the stairs. We fell asleep on our big couch in the living room. It was about 5 a.m. when I heard muffled, sorrowful moaning and crying upstairs. The sounds were mixed with my dream state, and reality wasn't set in. Then I got jolted up by my name being called out. It was Bill, standing on the stairs, looking and calling out to me. I felt so groggy that it didn't seem real. I could hardly open my eyes, one of my greatest regrets. He was trying not to wake my son sleeping next to me, so quietly he asked if we could talk. Looking at the clock, I remember saying, "Sweetheart, can we talk later?" He stood there for a moment and gave me a half smile and said, "Yeah," and walked out the front door, making that the last time I ever saw him. He drove his car to his parents' house and parked in their driveway, and took his own life, leaving a note that read, "You were both right." I was informed of this later that day by his father, who said it so nonchalantly like he was ordering a meal. He wanted to arrange a time to pick up his spare keys to Bill's car in their house that was located in his room. So many regrets and what-ifs, and in my mind, I know that they didn't deserve his love. His room was at the top of the stairs, and it was locked only by a deadbolt with no handle, so he had to remove the hinges to get in. His room was in disarray, tear-soaked journals speaking about the destruction of his relationship and the infidelity of Mike's friend. There were self-loathing comments etched on the side rails of his wooden bed frame, and his clothes were in piles everywhere. I felt a deep sadness all around me in that room, and the guilt that if I had just not been so tired the night before, we would be talking right now. We managed to unlock the deadbolt, but his parents took the keys, so all we could do was prop the door closed using a small book, and we planned to change it later. I couldn't bear to be in there. Weeks had passed, and it was the first of the month, so Mike and my son and I were going shopping for food, when there was a knock at the door, and it just happened to be Mike's friend. I was about to slam it in his face when he urgently said, "Please help her." I opened the door a little more, and standing next to him was a girl I had never seen before, and she looked desperate. "Please," he said. "She's in a bad situation, and her boyfriend was beating her. So I got her away from him, so now she needs a place to stay for a short time." I knew all too well about abuse, having formerly been a victim myself. I questioned why she didn't just go home to her family, but she said it was complicated, so I agreed to let her stay for a while. I told her that she could wait in the living room until we got back because I had to clean up that room, seeing that all his belongings were still in there. I also told her that I would pick up a new door handle because the deadbolt was in the open position and we didn't have a key, so the door didn't shut, so she agreed to wait there. A couple of hours later, I received a frantic call from Mike's friend, asking me where we were. I told him we were picking up a doorknob and he said, "You're not here?" and hung up. Weird. As we arrived, they were both standing in the carport, white as a ghost. He was holding her, and they both looked terrified. He told me that they went up to that room and laid on Bill's bed with the door propped closed and started to make out. I was appalled. All of my friend's stuff was just as he had left it. He said that they heard the door lock and then the bed started shaking. There were bangs on the door and the walls, Some cassette tapes he had recorded of love songs that were dedicated to Mike's friend crashed against the wall. He went on to tell me that he ran to the door thinking we were playing tricks on them, but he couldn't open it because it was locked, and no matter how much he tried, it wouldn't open. He said that the banging continued until the girl cupped her ears and screamed, "Please stop." At that point, he said the door lock clicked and the door fell open as if nothing happened. I was shocked. She exclaimed that she was going back to her mother's, because no matter what her situation was, there was no way she was ever going back inside that house. There was a little bit of disbelief, but at the same time they were both so adamant that this happened. And to tell you the truth, in the back of my head I told myself, yes, justice. Time went on, and Mike's friend no longer came over, and I was fine with that. I noticed that a few months later my son started laughing at nothing as if someone was making funny faces at him, and he demanded I put an extra plate out for dinner. I was always losing my keys because I never put them in the same place, but they would miraculously show up on the hook when I knew they weren't there before. One of his biggest pet peeves. One day, the doorbell rang, and it was Mike's friend. He wanted to sell me something, but I knew it was probably stolen. He was always trying to rip us off. As I was standing in the doorway, I felt the back of my hair move and slight pressure on my shoulders. His eyes got wide, and he stopped talking. He was looking above and behind my head, then grabbed my arm, pulling me forward. Surprised, I said, "What the hell are you doing?" He explained that a large dark fog-like mass rose behind him and was lurching towards him. I told him to leave and went back inside. Always my hero. We had been living there for a while, but once again they raised the rent, so we decided it was time to move. I miss him so much, but he will always be in my heart, and I am haunted by this even today. It takes more muscles in your face to smile and brighten up someone's day than it does to frown and be part of the problem. If you feel like no one is listening, talk to someone else. Never try to solve a temporary problem with a permanent solution. If someone comes to you, listen. Taking a few moments out of your day won't kill you, but it might kill them if you don't. We might not always like or understand the choices that our loved ones make, but they are not you. They have to live in their own skin. It doesn't matter how people look or how they choose to live their life. It's what's on the inside that matters, whether it be your child, your sister or brother, or your friend. We all matter. Story 3. The year was 1968, and my family was living in Hollywood, California. This was a time when nobody locked their doors at night, and your children could play safely outside until the streetlights came on. I was very small for my age and the youngest of 6. This occurred a few weeks before my 5th birthday. It was a normal day. Kids were playing outside, and some of my siblings were riding their bikes and playing in the courtyard. Well, I wanted to ride on the back of my brother's bike, but he was playing with my sister Melanie. I remember hopping up and down on the sidewalk, bugging my older siblings to give me a ride. So my sister Rachel gave in, and I think she was tired of hearing me beg. Now, our mother told us to never ride our bikes without wearing shoes, but I think sometimes because Rachel was so hard-headed that she never thought those rules applied to her. So she picked me up and put me on the back of her bike with a banana seat and told me to hold on to the sissy bar. Well, the moment I realized she didn't have pegs for my feet, I got scared. No, I'm scared. I changed my mind, I remember telling her over and over, but at that point she was going to take me for a ride. She told me that it would be fine, just hold my feet out wide. Well, Rachel had a tendency to sway every time she pumped the pedal, and my little legs were teetering back and forth, until, whoosh, my foot went into the bicycle spoke and cut off my toe. Blood was everywhere, and I started screaming, so she grabbed me up and ran with blood streaming right past my other siblings and right in the apartment. Oh, the look on my mother and elder sister's face. They were hysterical. So my sister Charity wrapped my foot with a towel and ran carrying me outside, where we all piled into the station wagon, leaving my brother and Melanie at home. The ride to the hospital was scary. Mum was screaming and honking the horn, and my elder sister was talking a mile a minute while holding my foot above my head. And Charity was stroking my face and wiping my tears, cupping my face so I didn't see how bad it really was. I think I was in shock, because it didn't really hurt as much until it started to throb in the car. We must have been a crazy sight. A crazy woman trying to help her kids, all covered in blood, with my foot in the air. Needless to say, they took us in right away. Going through the corridors, I remember the smell of rubbing alcohol and mercurochrome. They rushed me into a room with a metal table, and right away I was frightened. They unwrapped the towel from my foot, and for the first time, I saw the mangled mess that was once my toe, blackened by the grease from the chain on the bike. Mama kept assuring me that everything was going to be okay, but the look on her face told me differently. You see, I lost too much blood. The doctor asked me if she had the rest of my toe, so she called home and asked my brother and sister to go and find it. This is the funny part. So my brother and sister Melanie walked down the street to where all this happened. They were looking up and down the sidewalk and street when an old lady who was sitting on her porch asked them what they were doing. My brother told her that he was looking for his little sister's toe, so the doctors could sew it back on. The old lady told him that she saw the toe and put it in a baggie and threw it in the big dumpster, and if he wanted it, he would have to climb in and dig it out. So, that's what he did. After he found it, he jumped out. My sister Melanie, who was standing there the whole time with her eyes bigger than saucers, went with him to the neighbour's apartment to ask his friend's mum for a ride to the hospital. The second she opened the door, she stepped back, holding her nose because my brother smelt like trash, so she put a towel on her seat and gave them a ride. In the meantime, I am stood in the room and they are using long needles to numb my foot, and I am crying my little eyes out. At one point, my mother had her eyes closed, so I asked her what she was doing. As my voice skipped a breath, she told me to calm. "Shh," she said. "See white light around you. Envisage God's white healing night all around you and calm." I closed my eyes and tried my best, but the pain was too great. I gripped the sheet and tried to be brave, but it wasn't working. My heart was going a mile a minute, and with all that commotion in the room, I couldn't calm down. By now, the other half of my toe showed up, and they started preparing me for surgery. I pleaded with my mother to stay with me, but of course, the doctor said no. So, I started freaking out. My mother felt helpless, so she held me one last time. While I was in her arms, I saw a bright light over her shoulder. It was so bright that I squinted my eyes and tried to move her aside to see what it was. A man with long black hair and caramel-coloured skin, in a long orange robe and a glow from his face. He was standing there smiling at me. Standing next to him was what looked like a beautiful male angel, so bright that his light filled the room. I felt warmth come over all my body, and a sense of peace calmed my heart. I looked at my mother and told her that she could leave and not to worry. She looked confused, so I told her that my guardian angel was standing right there, with another one of my angels. "Don't you see them?" I asked my mother and Charity, but they didn't see anything. She put my hand on her cheek, and I told her not to cry because I wasn't scared anymore. They wheeled me into the operating room and gave me something that would put me to sleep, telling me I would wake up soon. I remember seeing the doctors and nurses all working on me with a big round light blocking out their faces, and I was hearing them talk. My body felt light, and I felt myself floating up over their heads, and saw my little body laying there. Looking over to the other side of the room, I noticed that man in the orange robe extending his hand, and the angels smiled, giving off the most calming vibration. I heard the doctor talking to the nurse, and he was telling her that his daughter was about the same age as I was, and that he was very concerned, because she is very sick and has an important operation that she has to have very soon. I looked up at the angel's face, and she nodded her head and smiled. It felt like only moments had passed when I was being pulled back into my body. I woke up, seeing my mother's beautiful face smiling, and her eyes full of tears. They told my mother that I would have to have quite a few more operations before I could walk, and I might have a limp. They also said I was lucky it wasn't my whole foot being as small as I was. Well, there were no regular rooms available at the time, so they had to put me in the pediatric burn ward. The room smelled weird, and it had to be kept cold. There were 4 other girls in there, some laying in contraptions to hold them still. The only bed they had for me was a big metal crib with bars that went all the way up like a cage. I didn't know I was going to be staying there all night. I thought that when my mother said I would only be there a little bit, I would be going home soon. They asked my elder sister if I could feed myself, and of course I could, so she said yes, and the nurse marked something down. After my family left for the night, I don't think because of all the commotion in the room with the other patients that it truly set in that I was all alone. There was a girl that stood too close to the floor heater, so it set her nightgown on fire. One was playing with matches, and one girl reached over the stove and caught her sleeve on fire. Well, the girl with the nightgown was laying in a contraption that held her in place, and she was watching TV through a mirror because her chin was stuck to her chest. This was all very traumatic for me. I didn't understand what was going on. It was time for bed, and all of the visitors were gone, so the nurses came in and put sandbags between some of the girls' legs so their legs didn't touch each other in their sleep. And then the nurses put a sheet on them. They cried in pain being moved, so when the nurse came to me and asked if I wanted a blanket, I thought she was going to do the same thing to me, and I already had a stabilizer on my foot, so being scared, I said no. The lights were dim and the TV was off. A few faint moans were made from the other girls throughout the night, and I was missing my mum. The night was long, and I was so cold that I started to shiver and quietly cried to myself, soaking my pillow with tears, when I felt the same warmth I felt before. I reached through the bars towards the light and someone held my hand. I didn't feel like crying anymore, and my eyes became very heavy, and I fell asleep. The next morning, the nurses woke us up bright and early, and the hospital was bustling with different noises. An orderly came in and put my food on a tray. She said that, "It says here, you can feed yourself," and then she left. Well, there was a stabilizer on my foot, and there were bars on my bed, so I couldn't feed myself if I wanted to. I laid there, and it almost felt like forever since I saw my family, and I was hungry. I almost started to cry when I heard a voice. "Hey you, little girl, over here." I tried to prop myself to see who was calling me, but I didn't see anyone. "I saw you last night," the voice said. "Who was that by your bed?" The girl across from me was looking through her mirror and moved her foot, telling me, "I'm right here." She asked me again, so I told her that it was my angel. She said that she wished she had an angel, so I told her she does. She just can't see her. I think that made her feel better, but that's what I believe to be true. My family came and went, leaving me with my own blanket, and the next day I was able to go home. On the way out, I insisted on seeing the doctor who was sewing my toe. I said that I had something very important to tell him right away. The nurse thought it was cute, I guess, so she called him on the intercom, and shortly he arrived to meet us in the hall. He asked me what he could do for me, so I motioned him down to the wheelchair with my finger and said that I needed to tell him something in his ear. So he bent down to my face, and I whispered, "Thank you." Then I told him that his daughter will be just fine. I know it. I told him. Then I said she won't be sick anymore, so don't worry. Then I kissed him on his cheek. He stood up and stuttered, holding his mouth. Then he hugged my mum for a long time. My mother didn't know what to think. So on the way home I told her all about my new friends in the burn ward and all the things that happened to me there. My mother told me as I got older that it never surprised her when I was little, because I was always saying things or unexplained things would happen around me. I miss my mother. Thank you for watching and/or listening to this video. Again, if you enjoyed it, please go ahead and hit the like button, and if you don't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and select the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads. Also, please leave a comment on this video letting me know what you thought of it. Comments really help with the YouTube algorithm and will really help my channel to grow. If you have a story you would like me to narrate, please email it to me at stories@daredeverall.com. I have recently passed 50,000 subscribers to this channel, so I'm halfway to my next major milestone. Thank you to everyone who is continuing to subscribe to this channel and contributing to its growth by liking videos and leaving comments. Once I get to 100,000 subscribers, my plan is to reward you all with an epic video with over 3 hours of original content. If that is the sort of thing you want to hear, please keep helping this channel to grow. If you want to support my channel even further, there are a number of ways you can do so. You can consider leaving me a tip for this video via my PayPal, link is included in the description. Check out my Teespring store and consider purchasing one of my shirt designs. Or head over to Audible, where there is a book Punch by J.R. Park that I narrated. I do get a small royalty if you decide to purchase that. Thanks again for watching.